Abandoned at 12 due to a physical disability, she silently built a corporate empire. 18 years later, her greedy parents returned, demanding her fortune only to unlock their ultimate downfall. The memory of that Central Park afternoon begins with a cruel sentence that severed all blood ties forever. My name is Bridget, and I am 30 years old, but my nightmare started at 12 when my parents abandoned me at a public park, simply because my left arm was physically disabled. They tightly held my older brother by his hand, while they walked away without ever looking back at my crying face. My father stopped just long enough to look at my arm before speaking the words that completely shattered my childhood. "Figure it out yourself, because I do not want to raise a disabled child with no future." That brutal abandonment forced me to spend the next 18 years trading my tears for absolute success. I built a corporate event planning empire from absolutely nothing to currently owning 12 thriving companies across 8 different states. My quiet Sunday morning shattered when my phone rang with an arrogant voice I had not heard in almost 2 decades. My father was on the other end, demanding a massive cut of my corporate assets, as if he had been a loving parent this whole time. He spoke with absolute entitlement while completely ignoring the painful history of abandonment between us. "We deserve 40% because I gave birth to you." I did not cry or scream at his outrageous demand, because I had already prepared for this exact moment. A cold calmness washed over me while a slight smile formed on my face before I finally responded to him. "Check the mailbox. If you want to know exactly what legal trap I placed inside that mailbox to completely destroy the people who abandoned me, please subscribe to the channel right now." On Monday morning, I threw the thick lawsuit file onto the glass desk in the office of my lawyer, Harvey. Harvey opened the heavy folder carefully before explaining that the lawsuit did not rely on a complete lack of legal documentation. He meticulously pointed out that they were exploiting an extremely minor technical error in the original adoption papers my late adoptive mother, Josephine, filed 18 years ago. The legal termination of their parental rights somehow lacked a final magistrate confirmation signature, which created a tiny but exceptionally dangerous civil loophole. This microscopic administrative failure was something nobody had ever challenged until today, because Josephine always maintained absolute discretion regarding my past. We immediately rejected the completely ridiculous hypothesis that my parents suddenly remembered their biological connection or felt any genuine affection toward me. The precise timing of this lawsuit made it perfectly clear that they had been secretly monitoring my corporate expansion for years while waiting for my total net worth to reach its absolute peak. They stayed completely silent while I struggled to build my business, but crawled out of the shadows the moment my companies generated massive national revenue. Harvey tapped his expensive pen against the glass table while looking directly into my eyes with a completely serious expression. "They did not forget you, Bridget, because they were just patiently waiting for you to become valuable enough to harvest." Hearing those words completely erased any remaining trace of emotional hesitation I might have possessed regarding my biological family. I immediately shifted my mindset into total legal defense mode, because protecting my corporate event planning empire was my absolute highest priority. I firmly instructed Harvey to initiate an emergency review of the complete share structure across all 12 regional branches so we could legally lock down every single corporate asset before the civil court issued any preliminary injunctions. My businesses operated flawlessly across 8 states because I built impenetrable organizational systems, and I refused to let greedy strangers dismantle my ultimate life achievement. The heavy door pushed open when my Chief Operating Officer Wade walked into the spacious room, carrying a highly confidential financial dossier. Wade managed all the complex daily operations for my companies, so he always instinctively recognized when an external variable threatened our corporate stability. He placed the dossier directly next to the massive lawsuit file before reporting the latest business intelligence he gathered from our internal security team. Wade revealed that my older brother Derek was actually the hidden mastermind who hired private investigators to illegally track the cash flow of my entire enterprise over the past 6 months. Wade opened the first page of the massive dossier to show us several surveillance photographs highlighting a familiar figure standing near our corporate properties. Derek has been snooping around branch number 3 because he is the one who smelled the profits and tipped off your parents. Confirming the real risk source completely shifted our entire perspective on how to successfully fight this ridiculous civil claim. Knowing that Derek orchestrated the covert financial reconnaissance while my parents served as the public legal plaintiffs meant this was a highly calculated extortion attempt rather than a simple family dispute over missing paperwork. I looked at Harvey and Wade before making the absolute final decision to dig straight into the darkest corners of their distant past. Harvey and I agreed to immediately pull every single historical tax record, along with any public medical documents associated with my early childhood from the state archives. We needed to find their ultimate fatal flaw because I fully intended to destroy their comfortable lives with the exact same ruthless precision they utilized when they abandoned me at that park. 3 days later, an early flight took Harvey and me to the Public Records Archive in Michigan to investigate the dark past. Under the expert guidance of Harvey, we systematically navigated the restricted state database while meticulously cross-referencing my childhood medical claims with historical Social Security filings from almost 2 decades ago. The massive government building felt incredibly cold while we sifted through thousands of digital pages looking for any financial discrepancies linked to my early childhood. Harvey spent several hours scrolling through the digitized archives until his eyes finally locked onto a highly suspicious pattern of continuous state financial payments. He tapped his index finger directly against the glowing computer screen before turning his head toward me with an expression of absolute professional disgust. "Look at this sequence of numbers because they exploited your frozen medical records to continue pocketing disability benefits for the last 15 years. The absolutely repulsive truth regarding my biological parents finally revealed itself right in front of my eyes in the form of official government documents. Timothy and Brenda intentionally concealed my physical abandonment from the state authorities so they could illegally defraud the United States government using my personal Social Security number. They essentially turned my physical disability into a continuous illicit revenue stream, while simultaneously leaving me to survive entirely alone at a public park. This sickening revelation perfectly established the true logical connection behind their sudden aggressive legal attack against my corporate empire. When Derek originally discovered my massive corporate wealth, he undoubtedly warned them that their historical financial crimes could easily be exposed during any standard background check. They strategically filed this aggressive civil lawsuit as a massive legal smokescreen, hoping to intimidate me into a rapid financial settlement before I ever thought about investigating their past. They completely underestimated my willingness to dig into the painful history I spent 18 years trying to forget. My mobile phone suddenly vibrated with an urgent call from Chicago, just as we finished analyzing the federal welfare documents. Wade spoke rapidly on the other end, reporting that our entire corporate network was currently facing an aggressive internal audit initiated by an unverified external financial firm. This phantom accounting firm demanded immediate access to our secure servers under the guise of preparing for the upcoming civil litigation. We both knew Derek was the invisible puppet master orchestrating this chaotic disruption to maximize the pressure on my daily corporate operations. His tactic was incredibly transparent because he wanted to force me into a corner where settling the lawsuit seemed cheaper than fighting the operational sabotage. I listened to Wade explain the escalating situation before I responded over the phone with a completely cold tone. "Let them make a mess because this lawsuit is just a smokescreen to cover up their federal fraud crimes." I firmly instructed Wade to temporarily lock down all sensitive corporate data to prevent any unauthorized data extraction by my brother. Meanwhile, Harvey focused entirely on securing the undeniable physical proof of their historical theft from the government archives. We carefully collected every single certified banking statement featuring the official red state seal to guarantee our evidence was completely admissible in a federal court. The archivist printed dozens of pages detailing every fraudulent check my parents cashed while pretending to care for a severely disabled child. Gathering those critical documents gave me an overwhelming sense of vindication, because the very people who threw me away had just handed me the ultimate weapon for their own destruction. We packed the heavy legal briefcases with the certified records before immediately rushing back to the airport to catch the next commercial flight to Chicago. I was no longer preparing for a simple civil dispute over a minor administrative paperwork error regarding my adoption. We were flying back home to wage an absolute all-out war against the ruthless criminals who merely happened to share my biological DNA. On the following Tuesday morning, a series of forged legal notices suddenly appeared across the desks of our major partners. Derek severely escalated his relentless corporate sabotage by deliberately sending fake federal audit warnings directly to our entire national supply chain. He intentionally impersonated federal tax authorities, hoping to completely freeze our upcoming event operations by inciting widespread financial panic among our most reliable vendors. His malicious tactics specifically aimed to paralyze our complex logistical capabilities right before the busiest corporate event season of the entire fiscal year. Wade desperately struggled inside the main executive boardroom while fielding furiously demanding calls from our most important enterprise clients, who demanded immediate clarification regarding the alarming rumors. Two massive corporate customers explicitly threatened to immediately cancel their exclusive multi-million-dollar contracts because they severely feared becoming hopelessly entangled in a chaotic legal dispute. The sheer volume of these aggressive inquiries threatened to overwhelm our dedicated legal department as they scrambled to continuously reassure our highly nervous investors. The suffocating tension inside the executive suite reached critical levels, since losing those specific high-value contracts would critically damage our quarterly revenue projections beyond repair. My best friend Claire, an elite public relations strategist, confidently strode into the chaotic boardroom wearing a sharp-tailored suit while holding a sleek leather folder containing her crisis protocols. She quickly assessed the escalating corporate panic before slamming her heavy folder onto the mahogany table to command the absolute attention of the entire executive committee. Do not argue about family matters, because we must use the audited financial prospectuses to crush those worthless papers immediately. Under her expert strategic coordination, we swiftly issued an incredibly uncompromising corporate statement to every single vendor operating within our massive national network. Our rapid response team immediately drafted a comprehensive press release detailing the exact financial stability of our 12 regional branches to counter the malicious misinformation campaign. This aggressive legal memorandum completely separated our unshakable corporate financial foundation from the completely baseless extortion claims orchestrated by my biological relatives. We securely attached our pristine federal tax clearances alongside our independently certified accounting records to definitively prove the utter illegitimacy of the fraudulent audit warnings. Claire firmly instructed the communications team to threaten immediate legal action against any external entity attempting to distribute those fabricated documents to our business partners. The comprehensive crisis management protocol swiftly reassured our major stakeholders regarding our absolute operational integrity during this highly coordinated malicious attack. The intense atmosphere inside the boardroom gradually stabilized as the executive team processed the incoming written responses from our major corporate accounts. Wade slowly nodded while letting out a deep sigh of profound relief before turning toward the executive committee to deliver the latest operational update. The crisis strategy worked because the partners just confirmed they are maintaining their contracts after receiving the statement from the legal department. Having successfully stopped the catastrophic internal corporate bleeding, I finally realized my next necessary objective required a deeply personal investigation into the distant past. Discovering their massive historical fraud at the state archives fully explained their desperate motives, but it failed to clarify the timeline of their current aggressive actions. I needed to immediately return to the old secluded house where my late adoptive mother Josephine previously lived to uncover the ultimate hidden truth. It deeply bothered me trying to logically understand exactly why she maintained absolute silence regarding the dangerous existence of my biological parents during all those incredibly vulnerable years. Josephine possessed a remarkably sharp analytical mind, so she never would have simply ignored a lurking threat without carefully preparing a comprehensive contingency plan. I strongly suspected she deliberately concealed a vital piece of defensive physical evidence inside that property, which could permanently terminate this malicious extortion attempt. At 7 o'clock on Friday evening, the sharp sound of a key turning inside the locked door of Josephine's secluded mansion echoed through the heavy silence. Harvey accompanied me into the dusty study where we immediately began tearing up the old floorboards because I had previously discovered a structural anomaly hidden within the original, as-built architectural blueprints. The blueprints indicated a hollow void measuring exactly 2 cubic feet situated beneath the main structural support beam. We forcefully pried away the thick wooden planks using heavy steel crowbars to reveal a completely dark cavity concealed directly beneath the concrete foundation. A heavy fireproof safe rested perfectly concealed under the thick oak flooring, waiting to be discovered after all these years of absolute silence. I knelt on the dusty floor before carefully inputting the exact numerical sequence representing the specific date my official adoption was legally finalized. The heavy steel mechanism clicked loudly before the thick door finally swung open to reveal the hidden contents safely stored inside. I reached inside to pull out a thick stack of yellowed papers containing incredibly disturbing information that completely clarified the terrifying reality regarding my biological parents. I held the fragile yellowed documents up toward the dim lighting while speaking directly to Harvey. Timothy and Brenda threatened to expose the adoption loophole to destroy my career when the company was just starting. The fireproof safe contained a massive collection of handwritten extortion letters explicitly drafted by Brenda, demanding outrageous financial compensation on a monthly basis. She ruthlessly threatened to legally invalidate my adoption status and publicly sabotage my corporate reputation if her aggressive financial demands were ever ignored. Those threatening letters were meticulously bundled alongside dozens of certified wire transfer receipts, documenting the massive sums Josephine quietly paid them over the years. My late adoptive mother sacrificed a significant portion of her personal wealth simply to purchase my professional peace during the most vulnerable stages of my early corporate expansion. This incredible discovery perfectly demonstrated her signature long-term strategic thinking regarding extreme corporate survival and delayed legal retaliation. Josephine willingly accepted a temporary financial concession to protect my fragile business empire from an immediate catastrophic public scandal. She completely understood that fighting them early on might have jeopardized my entire future, so she simultaneously archived every single piece of incriminating physical evidence. She deliberately engineered a truly devastating legal counterattack by patiently accumulating enough undeniable proof of their federal crimes. Josephine was silently building an impenetrable legal fortress while waiting for me to become powerful enough to successfully fight back against their endless greed. Harvey carefully gathered every single extortion letter, along with the certified bank receipts, before placing them securely inside his thick leather briefcase. He meticulously organized the federal fraud documents next to the handwritten threats to ensure our legal timeline remained absolutely flawless. He snapped the heavy metal clasps locked before looking directly at me with a profound sense of absolute professional respect. She did not just buy you time, Bridget, because Josephine prepared a life sentence for them sitting right inside this safe. Having absolute possession of the complete federal fraud documents along with the undeniable extortion evidence completely shifted the dynamic of this entire legal battle. I was no longer a victim desperately trying to defend my massive corporate wealth from a baseless civil claim filed by greedy strangers. I was now a fully armed corporate executive, standing completely ready to enter the scheduled deposition room to set an absolutely inescapable legal trap for the plaintiffs. We confidently walked out of the secluded mansion because we finally possessed the ultimate ammunition required to permanently destroy Timothy and Brenda. At 10 o'clock on Wednesday morning, the frigid atmosphere of the conference room witnessed our first direct confrontation after 18 long years. Timothy and Brenda sat comfortably on the opposite side of the long wooden table, projecting an incredibly false sense of parental authority alongside their legal counsel. The opposing lawyer, Dennis, initiated the formal deposition proceeding by presenting an incredibly hypocritical legal argument regarding absolute biological ownership. He aggressively claimed that physical abandonment, or severe emotional detachment, completely failed to invalidate their inherent natural guardianship rights over my corporate assets. He attempted to build a legal narrative portraying them as victims of unfortunate circumstances who never legally relinquished their claims to my success. Dennis confidently leaned forward across the polished wooden table before speaking directly to the court reporter to ensure his statement remained permanently recorded. Emotional distance does not mean they lose their legal rights to the enterprise of their biological daughter. Harvey completely ignored that incredibly repulsive moral justification while smoothly transitioning into a highly calculated line of financial questioning. He deliberately crafted specific trap questions designed to force Timothy and Brenda to permanently establish their exact financial timeline under absolute oath. Harvey methodically asked them to clarify their primary income sources following the specific day they abandoned me at that public park. He explicitly inquired whether they ever sought financial assistance from government programs or private individuals using their status as my biological parents. Both of them confidently committed blatant perjury without displaying a single ounce of hesitation during the recorded session. They boldly testified that they absolutely never received any external financial compensation or government support related to my existence since that specific afternoon. Timothy spoke with absolute arrogance while firmly denying any hidden revenue streams because he falsely believed their historical tracks remained perfectly hidden. Brenda nodded along with her husband while maintaining a completely fabricated expression of maternal sorrow to further manipulate the official legal record. They explicitly stated under oath they struggled financially on their own without ever seeking or accepting a single dollar legally linked to my name. Harvey maintained a perfectly neutral expression while slowly reaching inside his thick leather briefcase to extract the certified state documents we secured from Michigan. He smoothly slid the heavy stack of fraudulent medical tax statements directly across the center of the conference table toward the opposing counsel. Those specific papers contained undeniable physical proof of their federal crimes, spanning nearly 2 decades of illicit government withdrawals. Harvey smiled slightly before delivering the ultimate legal strike that completely shattered their entire extortion campaign right in front of the stenographer. So you both confirm under oath that the signature receiving disability benefits for the last 15 years does not belong to you. Absolute terror immediately flooded the face of Dennis the exact moment his eyes processed the official red state seals stamped across the documents. He instantly realized his arrogant clients had just willingly trapped themselves into a massive federal perjury charge during a formally recorded legal proceeding. The opposing lawyer frantically attempted to salvage the catastrophic situation by hastily requesting an immediate emergency recess to consult privately with his clients. The room fell completely silent because everyone present fully understood that his desperate legal intervention came entirely too late to protect them. Timothy stared blankly at the undeniable proof of his historical federal fraud, while his hands began trembling uncontrollably above the table. Brenda lost her fake maternal expression entirely, as pure panic consumed her features, making her look incredibly small. The inescapable legal trap clamped shut permanently, effectively ending their ridiculous civil claim regarding my 12 corporate branches. They walked into that deposition room hoping to forcefully steal 40% of my companies, but they ultimately sealed their own federal prison sentences through their own arrogant lies. On the first Monday morning of November, the presiding judge struck her heavy wooden gavel to officially commence the formal civil hearing amidst incredibly suffocating courtroom silence, attracting the attention of everyone present in the room. The opposing counsel Dennis immediately stood up, nervously attempting to withdraw several completely ridiculous civil demands regarding my extensive corporate assets. He desperately tried narrowing the legal scope of the original lawsuit, hoping to somehow save his incredibly arrogant clients from an imminent federal prosecution following their disastrous deposition. The presiding judge sternly rejected his frantic motion because the formal legal record already reflected their aggressive initial claims regarding my event planning companies. Dennis visibly panicked, knowing his clients were hopelessly trapped inside a massive legal nightmare. They aggressively initiated themselves when they decided to attack my 12 regional branches. Harvey confidently approached the center podium to deliver the absolute knockout blow against their entirely fabricated civil extortion campaign under the watchful eyes of the entire gallery. He systematically dismantled their entire biological guardianship argument by simultaneously submitting the certified Social Security fraud documents, verifying their 15 years of illegal government withdrawals using my personal identity. He then presented the massive stack of handwritten extortion letters Brenda previously mailed to my late adoptive mother, Josephine. Harvey concluded his devastating evidence presentation by officially entering the secret audio cassette tape Josephine securely preserved inside her fireproof safe into the public court record for everyone to hear. The court clerk pressed a physical button, allowing the chillingly arrogant voice of Timothy to loudly echo throughout the cavernous courtroom walls. My responsibility ended when she was 12, so hand over the money, and I will not touch her company. Hearing that undeniable audio confession caused the internal dynamic of the opposing biological family to completely shatter right inside the solemn courtroom. Derek suddenly jumped up from his wooden chair while frantically screaming across the room to publicly blame both Timothy and Brenda for engineering the entire illegal extortion scheme. He ruthlessly threw his own parents under the proverbial bus, hoping to somehow negotiate a lighter federal sentence regarding his personal criminal involvement with distributing those fabricated corporate audit notices. The chaotic scene perfectly exposed their severe lack of genuine familial loyalty, since they instantly turned against each other the exact moment facing absolute legal destruction became completely unavoidable. Their pathetic display of mutual betrayal disgusted everyone observing the official proceedings, including their own defense attorney, who slowly backed away from their table. The presiding judge firmly slammed her wooden gavel repeatedly to restore absolute order before slowly taking off her reading glasses. She glared directly at the opposing table with incredibly cold, sharp eyes before delivering her final devastating judicial ruling without showing any mercy. I dismiss this lawsuit entirely because judicial enforcement will immediately transfer this file to federal agencies to investigate extortion and fraud. The formal civil trial abruptly ended by effectively serving an absolute death sentence to their personal freedom alongside their completely ruined professional reputations. They arrogantly walked into the courthouse hoping to legally steal my massive corporate wealth, but they ultimately guaranteed their own impending federal incarcerations. The uniformed bailiffs immediately moved forward to secure the courtroom, while Timothy and Brenda sat completely paralyzed by the catastrophic reality of their spectacularly failed extortion plot. There was absolutely no lingering opportunity for any emotional reconciliation because I completely severed those toxic biological ties the exact moment I discovered their decades of federal financial crimes. I silently watched them suffer the severe legal consequences they rightfully deserved, without feeling a single ounce of pity for the ruthless criminals who abandoned me at that public park 18 years ago. Exactly 1 week after the civil trial concluded, I quietly parked my car across the street while staring directly toward their front porch. Timothy, alongside Brenda, accompanied by Derek, slowly walked outside to open their residential mailbox while foolishly expecting routine daily deliveries. They instead pulled out the heavily anticipated legal trap I confidently promised them during our initial Sunday phone call. Their faces immediately drained of all color when they horrifiedly read the official asset freeze orders accompanied by the severe federal criminal indictments. The absolute perfection of this specific moment perfectly mirrored the exact challenge I issued to them on that peaceful Sunday morning. Multiple heavily armored federal law enforcement vehicles suddenly swarmed the quiet suburban street before aggressively parking directly in front of their manicured lawn. Several armed federal agents quickly exited the tactical vehicles before forcefully placing heavy metal handcuffs on all three terrified individuals. The federal authorities strictly escorted the completely humiliated criminals toward the secure transport vans, while the entire surrounding neighborhood actively watched the massive spectacle unfold. Their spectacular public downfall provided the ultimate emotional closure I desperately needed after spending nearly 2 decades building my massive corporate business from absolutely nothing. Watching them lose everything they valued validated every single sacrifice Josephine made to protect my vulnerable future from their endless greed. I slowly rolled down my tinted car window while making direct eye contact with Timothy to deliver my final unyielding statement by saying, "The law does not pay for cruelty, so goodbye." I smoothly rolled the window back up before shifting the heavy vehicle into gear to confidently drive away from the chaotic suburban scene. My deliberate departure perfectly mirrored the exact physical motion they executed when they ruthlessly abandoned me at that public park 18 years ago. The crucial difference remained that I currently hold the absolute power to completely dictate the final outcome of our permanently severed relationship. I permanently close the darkest chapter of my childhood, while returning to my headquarters to successfully expand my corporate event planning enterprise. The Gentle Drama Stories channel proudly presents this specific narrative strictly for educational purposes, regarding the absolute importance of establishing firm personal boundaries. We aim to thoroughly demonstrate how victims must always handle severe family crises using pure rational logic alongside the strict application of corporate law. Bridget decisively protected her massive corporate empire by completely severing all toxic biological ties without displaying any unnecessary emotional hesitation. The malicious antagonists ultimately suffered the absolutely inevitable legal consequences, resulting directly from their own spectacularly flawed extortion decisions. Their ruthless greed fundamentally guaranteed their own devastating federal incarcerations without receiving any mercy. Looking back at this incredibly massive legal warfare reveals several profoundly deep lessons regarding toxic family dynamics alongside corporate survival. True family is absolutely never defined by shared biological DNA, but rather through continuous physical protection, similar to the undeniable sacrifices Josephine consistently provided. Biological parental rights never function as a permanent legal immunity card, granting toxic individuals the ultimate permission to relentlessly exploit their wealthy offspring. Avoiding fundamental parental responsibilities constitutes a massive moral failure, but attempting to maliciously defraud the legal system guarantees the most severe judicial punishments imaginable. Establishing impenetrable personal boundaries remains the only viable survival strategy when completely cutting off the highly toxic elements preventing your ultimate professional growth. We sincerely express our deepest gratitude to all the incredibly patient viewers who actively listen to this highly intense legal journey until the very end. Your continuous support remains absolutely invaluable to our storytelling community. What is your personal perspective regarding this severely uncompromising legal punishment? Please leave a detailed comment sharing exactly how you would personally handle these incredibly toxic biological relatives.